The first time Elena Moretti saw him, she almost didn't notice him at all. He stood near the old stone fountain in Piazza San Lorenzo, rain soaking through his thin jacket, clutching a folder against his chest as if it were the only solid thing left in his life. People rushed past him without a second glance, umbrellas colliding, shoes splashing through puddles, the city too busy to care. Elena noticed because she had trained herself to see what others ignored. At 46, Elena Moretti was one of the wealthiest women in the city. Her name appeared in business magazines, whispered at elite dinners, and spoken carefully by competitors who feared her intelligence more than her money. She owned hotels, investment firms, and properties that reshaped the skyline. She was beautiful, in a way that commanded silence when she entered a room. Dark eyes, controlled posture, elegance sharpened by experience. Yet behind the glass walls of her penthouse, she lived alone. Her husband had died 8 years earlier in a car accident on a coastal road. The newspapers called it tragic. The police called it unfortunate. Elena called it unresolved. Some nights, when the city lights flickered below her balcony, she still wondered whether his death had truly been an accident or whether someone had wanted him silent. That question never slept. That evening, Elena should not have been walking through the piazza. Flooded streets had forced her driver to stop several blocks away, and impatience had made her insist on walking. She liked the rain. It washed away appearances. It reminded her that control was always temporary. That was when she saw him. He looked up just as she slowed her steps. Their eyes met briefly, and something unfamiliar stirred in her chest. He was young, foreign, and unmistakably out of place. His expression held confusion, determination, and a quiet vulnerability that felt dangerously human. He spoke into his phone in an accent that was not Italian, not French, something warmer, softer. His phone went silent, and frustration crossed his face. "Are you lost?" Elena asked, surprising herself. He turned fully toward her, clearly startled that a woman like her was addressing him. "I think so," he admitted, holding up his dead phone. "Technology failed me." She smiled, a genuine smile she had not used in years. He told her the address he was looking for. It was close. She pointed him in the right direction, and he thanked her with a sincerity that felt unguarded. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he added impulsively. "The rain, the streets." Elena laughed softly. "I've survived worse than rain." She walked away before the moment could stretch into something dangerous. Still, she felt his gaze linger on her back, and for reasons she could not explain, her pulse quickened. That night, Elena slept poorly. She dreamed of water rising around her, silk and jewels dragging her down as she struggled to breathe. Just as her lungs burned, a hand reached for hers, strong, young, familiar. Before she could grasp it, the water turned black and swallowed everything. She woke up gasping, heart racing, the city silent around her. Over the next week, Elena began seeing him everywhere. At first, she told herself it was coincidence. The city was large, but not infinite. Then she saw him again at the university cafe, hunched over textbooks, exhaustion written across his face. Another day, she noticed him on the tram standing awkwardly, gripping the rail as if afraid of falling. Finally, she saw him in the library courtyard, sketching buildings with intense focus. His name, she learned quietly, was Armand Kaya. He was 24 years old. A foreign student studying international architecture. Brilliant, according to his professors. Financially struggling, according to university records. Alone, according to everything else. Most importantly, he did not know who she was. That unsettled Elena more than she cared to admit. One afternoon, as she exited a meeting with city planners, she noticed him arguing with an administrator outside the university office. His voice was controlled but strained. Words like visa, tuition, and deadline floated through the air. When the administrator walked away dismissively, Armand stood frozen, staring at the ground. Elena should have walked past him. She didn't. "Is there a problem?" she asked. He recognized her immediately. His eyes widened, then softened. You? He said. From the rain. She nodded. What's wrong? He hesitated, pride battling desperation. Finally, he exhaled. Everything. In that moment, Elena felt something she had not felt in years, purpose that had nothing to do with money or power. She didn't know it yet, but helping him would pull her into a world of secrets, danger, obsession, and betrayal that would threaten everything she had built. And Armin, the young foreign student with nothing to lose, would become the one thing she could not control. Elena did not offer help immediately. She had learned long ago that power revealed too quickly became a weapon others tried to seize. Instead, she listened. Armin spoke quietly, his words measured, as if afraid that sounding desperate would make him weak. His scholarship funding had been delayed due to an administrative review. Without payment, his enrollment would be suspended within 2 weeks. Without enrollment, his visa would be revoked. The system, efficient and merciless, was already closing its doors. Elena nodded, her face unreadable. You should appeal, she said calmly. I have, Armin replied. 3 times. There was something in his eyes, then pride wounded but unbroken, that unsettled her. Men her age looked at her with calculation or fear. Younger men often looked at her with hunger. Armin looked at her as if she were simply present. Come, she said after a pause. There's a cafe nearby. You look like you haven't eaten. He hesitated, then followed. They sat across from each other in silence at first. Elena noticed the way his fingers trembled slightly. As he lifted the cup, the way he studied people when he thought no one was watching. He was observant, careful, dangerous in a quiet way. You didn't tell me why you came here, she said. Armin smiled faintly. Because this city builds the future without remembering the past. I wanted to change that. Elena felt the words settle inside her like a challenge. Over the next days, she found excuses to see him. She told herself it was curiosity, mentorship, charity. Lies were easier when they sounded reasonable. She arranged a meeting with a foundation director, carefully, anonymously, and within 48 hours, Armin's funding issue disappeared. When she told him, he stared at her in disbelief. You did this? He asked. I made a call, she replied. Nothing more. He stood abruptly, emotion breaking through his restraint. I don't know how to thank you. Don't. Elena said quickly. Just succeed. That should have been the end. WASN single quotes T. Their meetings continued. Lunches turned into long walks. Conversations deepened. Armin spoke of his childhood, of a father who disappeared, of a mother who taught him resilience instead of hope. Elena spoke less, but when she did, her words carried weight. She never mentioned her husband, never mentioned the accident. Some ghost demanded silence. One evening, as they walked along the river, Armin stopped suddenly. You're lonely, he said. Elena laughed, sharp and defensive. That's an assumption. It's an observation, he replied gently. You listen like someone who hasn't been heard in a long time. The truth struck harder than any insult. Elena turned away, staring at the dark water. She felt exposed and worse understood. That night, she received a message she hadn't seen in years. Stop digging into the past. Some accidents were meant to happen. There was no sender name, only a number she didn't recognize. Elena's breath slowed. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She had not spoken to anyone about reopening the investigation into her husband's death. Yet someone knew. Someone was watching. The next morning, she noticed the black car parked across from her building. It was there again the following day. And the day after that. When she met Armin later that afternoon, she studied him differently. Was he coincidence or connection? You're distracted, he said. Am I? She replied. Yes, he said. Softly. And whatever is haunting you, it scares you. Elena wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to pull him into her world, to feel less alone in the dark. But power had taught her one unforgiving rule. The people you love are the easiest to destroy. That night, she dreamed again of water. This time, Armin was there reaching for her, but shadows moved behind him, pulling him under. Elena woke with one certainty burning in her chest. Loving him would cost her something. Not loving him might cost her everything. Elena tried to distance herself after that. She canceled lunches, shortened conversations, blamed work. Armin noticed immediately. He always noticed. The warmth between them cooled into something cautious, something restrained, and that restraint hurt more than honesty ever could. When he finally confronted her, it was in the university courtyard, late in the evening when the students had thinned and the air carried the quiet hum of distant traffic. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. "No," Elena replied too quickly. "You didn't." "Then why do you look at me like I'm already gone?" The question pierced her defenses. Elena turned away, gathering control the way she had learned to do in boardrooms and courtrooms. "Because people disappear," she said carefully. "Sometimes without warning." Armin stepped closer. "You talk like someone who's already lost someone she loved." She said nothing. That silence told him everything. They stood there, suspended between truth and fear, until Elena forced herself to speak. "You should focus on your studies," she said. "On building your future, don't let distractions interfere." His jaw tightened. "Is that what I am to you? A distraction?" "No," she said quietly. "You're a risk." For the first time, Armin looked hurt. That night, Elena ordered a private investigation. Not into Armin, she refused to cross that line, but into the anonymous message, the black car, and the reopened whispers around her husband's death. The investigator's voice was careful when he called her 2 days later. "Someone has been accessing sealed records," he said. "High-level permissions. And there's something else." Elena closed her eyes. "Tell me." "The same account that accessed your husband's file also accessed university immigration records," he said. "Specifically a foreign student named Armin Kaya." The room felt suddenly too small. "What connection?" Elena asked, forcing calm. "Unknown," the investigator replied. "But the overlap isn't random." Elena ended the call with steady hands that betrayed nothing. Inside, her thoughts spiraled. Coincidences were for people without enemies. She had enemies. Always had. When she met Armin again, it was with a wall firmly in place. She asked neutral questions. She watched his expressions closely. He seemed unchanged, still earnest, still open. But now she noticed how carefully he chose his words. "Did someone contact you recently?" she asked casually. He looked surprised. "No. Why?" "Just asking." He studied her for a long moment. "You don't trust me." "I trust facts," she replied. "Then ask them," he said. "Don't look at me like I'm hiding something." Elena wanted to believe him. But trust, once cracked, never returned whole. That evening she was followed. She confirmed it twice before confronting the man outside her building. He didn't resist when she demanded answers. "You're being observed," he said bluntly. "Not for what you're doing, for who you're seeing." Her blood went cold. "Who hired you?" He shook his head. "You don't want that answer." She did. But she also knew when silence was a warning. The next morning, Armin didn't show up for class. By afternoon, his phone went straight to voicemail. By nightfall, Elena's unease turned into fear. She went to his apartment herself, a small, cramped space near the old train line. The door was unlocked. Inside, his belongings were still there. His laptop sat open on the desk, frozen on a document filled with architectural sketches, and one sentence typed repeatedly beneath them. "If she finds out, everything ends." Elena's heart pounded. Finds out what? As she turned to leave, she noticed something that made her stop cold. A photograph lay half hidden under a book on the desk. She picked it up slowly. It was her. Younger, smiling, standing beside her husband, taken years before his death, and written on the back, in Armin's handwriting, were the words, "You were never supposed to meet. Elena understood then that Arman was not an accident. He was a door someone had opened. And now, that door could not be closed. Elena left the apartment without closing the door behind her. The hallway felt narrower than before, the walls pressing in as if they had heard everything she now knew. The photograph burned in her mind, her husband's smile, her own younger face, and the impossible question that followed her down the stairs. How could Arman have that picture? Why would someone plant him so precisely in her path? She did not go home. Instead, she drove to the one place she had avoided for years, the coastal road where her husband had died. The sea was restless that night, waves crashing violently against the rocks, wind carrying the salt sting of memory. She stood near the guardrail, staring at the spot where his car had plunged, and for the first time allowed herself to say the words she had buried. "You didn't die by accident." Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "You're getting close." "That's dangerous." Elena didn't reply. She didn't need to. Whoever was watching her already knew where she stood. The next morning, Arman resurfaced. He appeared at her office without warning, pale, exhausted, eyes rimmed red as if he hadn't slept. Security tried to stop him, but Elena intervened before they could touch him. The moment the door closed behind them, the silence turned heavy. "You went to my apartment," he said. "Yes," Elena replied. "You disappeared." "I was protecting you," he said quietly. Her composure cracked. "By lying to me, by spying on my life." Arman's jaw tightened. "I didn't spy on you. I was assigned to observe you." The words fell between them. Like shattered glass. Elena stepped back. "Assigned by whom?" He hesitated, then spoke with painful honesty. "Your husband." The room spun. "He didn't die when you think he did," Arman continued. "Not the way they told you. He was investigating financial networks tied to political laundering, offshore accounts, and private influence groups. He believed someone close to him was involved. When he realized he was being watched, he disappeared." Elena's voice trembled despite her effort. "I buried him." "Yes," Arman said. "But the body was never conclusively identified." Silence stretched until it became unbearable. "You were sent to me," she said slowly. "To watch me." "Yes," Arman admitted. "Years ago, when I was still a teenager, I didn't know who you were then. Only that I was being trained to blend in, to wait. When I was sent here as a student, I didn't expect to actually meet you. I didn't expect to." He stopped himself. "To fall in love with me," Elena finished. He looked at her, eyes filled with regret and longing. "That was never part of the plan." Anger surged through her veins, sharp and immediate. "Get out," she said. "Elena, get out," she repeated, louder now. "Before I forget everything I've ever been afraid of." He left without another word. That night, Elena locked herself inside her penthouse. Lights off, city glowing beneath her. She replayed every conversation, every glance, every coincidence. Love had crept in wearing honesty, but it had been born from deception. That realization hurt more than betrayal. Then the call came. A voice she recognized instantly. "Elena," the man said. "It's time you stopped asking questions." Her heart stopped. "Marco?" She whispered. Her husband was alive. Before she could speak again, the line went dead. The following morning, the news broke quietly. A financial scandal involving one of Elena's oldest business partners had surfaced overnight. Accounts frozen. Warrants issued. Her empire was being dismantled piece by piece. Someone was forcing her hand. Elena understood now that love had been used as leverage. Arman was both weapon and warning. But she was no longer the woman who waited for answers. She was the woman who made them bleed. And somewhere between truth and danger, between revenge and desire, she knew one thing with terrifying clarity. This story would not end without sacrifice. Elena did not panic. Panic was for people without options. By noon, her legal team filled the conference room. Voices overlapping as screens displayed frozen accounts, sealed warrants, A name she had trusted for decades now marked in red. Elena listened without interrupting, her expression calm, almost detached. Inside, however, she was assembling the truth piece by piece. This was not a random collapse. It was a controlled burn, designed to corner her. Pause all public statements. She finally said, "Let them think I'm retreating." The room fell silent. Retreat was not a word usually associated with Elena Moretti. That afternoon, she made a decision that terrified her more than any financial loss. She called Armin. He answered immediately. "Where are you?" she asked. There was a pause. "Somewhere." "I shouldn't be," he replied. "Good," she said. "Because I need you." They met after dark in a parking structure beneath an unfinished development. Concrete pillars cast long shadows, and the city's noise felt distant, muted. Armin looked thinner, harder, as if the truth had aged him overnight. Elena studied him carefully, every instinct screaming both danger and desire. "You used me," she said. "Yes," he admitted, "and I hated myself for it." "Then you'll help me now," she said. "Not because you owe me, but because someone is playing both of us." He nodded. "My assignment was never to destroy you. It was to see if you would break." "And?" she asked. "I failed," he said softly. "You didn't break." That honesty cracked something between them. They began working together in secret. Armin used contacts Elena never knew existed, networks that moved beneath governance, beneath corporations, beneath law. Elena used her influence, her remaining power, and her ability to manipulate perception. Together, they uncovered what Marco had been hiding for years. Her husband had built a ghost empire. Shell companies, shadow accounts, information traded like currency. He had not been running from danger. He had been controlling it. And now, as his system collapsed, he was using Elena as a final test or a final sacrifice. "You were never supposed to survive this," Armin said one night as they studied files in her darkened penthouse. "If you fell, everything would reset." Elena laughed bitterly. "He underestimated me." But love complicated everything. The tension between them became unbearable. Every shared glance carried history, betrayal, and longing. When Armin finally touched her, hesitant, reverent, it felt both forbidden and inevitable. They crossed the line knowing it could be used against them, and it was. The next morning, images leaked. Photos of Elena and Armin together. Headlines screamed scandal. The powerful widow and the young foreign student. Public opinion turned vicious. Investors fled. The narrative was clear. She had been compromised. Elena watched the news without flinching. "Now they think I'm weak," she said. "That's their mistake." Armin looked at her with fear. "They'll come for me next." "I know," Elena replied. "Which is why you need to disappear." He shook his head. "I won't leave you." "You will," she said. "Because I need you alive." That night, Elena arranged his exit. New identity, new country, no digital trail. As dawn approached, they stood facing each other one last time. "I don't regret loving you," Armin said. "Neither do I," Elena replied. "That's what will save us." He left before she could change her mind. Hours later, Elena made her move. She released everything. Documents, names, proof of her husband's empire and the men still running it. The city shook. Arrests followed. Markets trembled. Marco's voice messages began flooding her phone. Angry, desperate, unmasked. By nightfall, Elena stood alone again, watching the skyline burn with news alerts and sirens. She had sacrificed love to win the war. Or so she thought. Because as her phone vibrated one final time, a message appeared from an untraceable number. "You chose power over me. Now I choose blood." And Elena knew the story was not over. Elena did not sleep after the message arrived. She stood by the windows of her penthouse, watching the city pulse beneath her like a living organism. Sirens weaving through streets, news. Helicopters hovering. The quiet panic of a system realizing it had been exposed. Marco had always loved control, but now control was slipping from his hands. that made him dangerous in ways she had never seen before. By morning, the first body was found. One of Marco's oldest financial intermediaries was discovered dead in a hotel room, ruled an apparent suicide within hours. Elena knew better. Marco was erasing loose ends, sending a message written in blood. She understood then that this was no longer about money or power. It was personal. Elena moved fast. She vanished from public view, shifting locations, changing routines, trusting no one fully. Even her most loyal security was reduced to layers of distance and misdirection. She had learned from Marco's greatest lesson. The closer people were, the easier they were to manipulate. 3 days later, she received a secure transmission. A single video file. Marco appeared on the screen, older than she remembered, his face carved by years of paranoia and secrecy. His voice was calm, almost affectionate. "You always were brilliant, Elena," he said. "I wondered how long it would take before you followed the trail. I hoped you wouldn't. Where is he?" Elena whispered. Though she knew Marco couldn't hear her, Marco smiled slowly. "The boy? He was a mistake. A weakness. You made him important." The video cut to black. Rage surged through her, sharp and focused. Marco had underestimated one thing: he had taught her how to think like him. And that meant she knew where to look. Elena leaked one final piece of information, carefully timed and publicly devastating. A location. An account. A name Marco could not allow to surface. Within hours, intelligence agencies moved. Borders tightened. Assets vanished. Marco was forced into the open. He contacted her again that night. "End this," he said. "Come to me. Alone." She agreed. The meeting took place in an abandoned villa overlooking the sea. The same coast where the world believed Marco had died. Waves crashed below, relentless and unforgiving. He waited inside, shadows stretching across cracked marble floors. "You always loved the view," he said when she entered. "You used it to fake your death," Elena replied. "Poetic," Marco laughed softly. "I did it to survive." "So did I," she said. He studied her, searching for weakness, for hesitation. "I never meant to hurt you." "You trained someone to love me," Elena said coldly. "That was the cruelest thing you ever did." For the first time, Marco looked shaken. "You chose power over him," Marco said. "I knew you would." Elena met his gaze without fear. "I chose truth." She stepped aside. Armen emerged from the shadows. Alive, bruised, but standing. Marco's face drained of color. "Impossible." "You taught him how to disappear," Elena said. "You just forgot he could choose when to return." Sirens echoed in the distance. Marco understood then that the game was over. He tried to run. He didn't make it far. Weeks later, the world believed the story was finished. Marco Moretti was officially dead, this time confirmed. His empire dismantled. His secrets exposed. Elena's name cleared, her power restored, though reshaped. She stepped away from public dominance, transferring control quietly, choosing influence. Over visibility. In Armen, he stayed. Not as a student. Not as a weapon. But as a man who had survived the same darkness. They did not rush into happiness. Some wounds demanded patience. Some love needed time to become safe. But on quiet evenings, when the city softened and the sea reflected the sky, Elena allowed herself something she had once believed impossible. Peace. She had lost much. She had sacrificed deeply. But she had survived, and in surviving, she had reclaimed the one thing Marco could never control: her choice. A year later, the city no longer whispered Elena Moretti's name with fear or scandal. It spoke it with respect. She no longer occupied the tallest tower or commanded rooms through sheer presence. Instead, she chose distance, privacy, and select influence. Her wealth still existed, but it no longer defined her. Power had almost destroyed her once. She refused to let it do so again. The villa by the sea became her refuge. Every morning, she walked along the same coastline where death had once rewritten her life. The waves were calmer now, or perhaps she was. Memory no longer felt like a wound, it felt like a scar, proof of survival. Armin rebuilt himself slowly. He returned to his studies, not as a pawn in someone else's design, but as a man who had chosen his own future. He carried the weight of what he had done, of how he had entered her life, but Elena never used that past as a weapon. Forgiveness, she had learned, was not weakness. It was freedom. Their love did not burn recklessly anymore. It steadied. It learned patience. They spoke openly about fear, about control, about the cost of secrets. There were nights when silence said more than words, and mornings when hope returned quietly, without drama. Sometimes Elena thought of Marco. Not with longing, not with hatred. Only with clarity. He had tried to shape the world through manipulation. Believing control was the highest form of intelligence. She had learned something else entirely, that survival was not about domination, but choice. One evening, as the sun dipped into the sea, Armin took her hand and asked, "Do you ever regret it? Losing everything you built?" Elena looked at the horizon, then at him. "No," she said, "because I finally built something that can't be taken from me." The wind carried the scent of salt and freedom. The past no longer chased her. The future no longer frightened her. Elena Moretti had loved, had lost, had been used, had fought back. And in the end, she did not just survive the story. She rewrote it. Asterisk, if this story made you feel something, fear, love, or suspense, then don't let it end here. Like, subscribe and share, because the next story dives even deeper into secrets no one was supposed to survive.